Hello, happy Tuesday. Welcome back to another episode of The Practice. This show is an unrehearsed look into my workflow. I'm Stuart, this is Buster, and I'm a 3D artist, designer, animator, and your pal, and I'm excited to have you back again for another episode this week. Let me put this little guy down. Wanted to include him in the intro. Rarely do that. That's the Pup Buster. Big episode 189. Question of the week is, do you care at all about the question of the week? I've been running this for, 20, 25 episodes. Some weeks we get some interaction. Some weeks we get just basically no replies at all. So I'm toying with the idea of discontinuing the question of the week. Let me know if it's useful to you at all. So there you have it. Question of the week. Do you care at all about the question of the week? Kind of meta. So for this week's episode, I felt like I would riff on the stay-at-home theme and create kind of like a little bubbly house village kind of a deal. I've got an idea of using the hair object to, create some interest around it. Make sure I'm all set up here. Hello. Cool. All right, so let's just get into it. Let's start just a plane, and I'm going to expand that. And what I've done here, as you can tell, looks a little different than usual, but I've added some of my sculpting. I've added basically the sculpting brushes to this side palette here, because I use them so frequently, and I don't always feel like going over to the sculpt menu. So I just added that in over here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use these sculpt tools, just create a little bit of a depression in the center here. Not that kind of depression. So what I want is kind of a little valley, just setting the scene for this little bubble house. Cute little bubble house that probably some hobbits or something like that occupy. Some kindly creatures. And I like this because it gives us some variation, some nice organic shapes. Get in there and start modeling. It's a good start. Whoops. There's a happy little valley. Cool. And I'm going to use my favorite shape in the world, these capsules, to really basically make the entire bubble house. I've got a little sketch. Actually, let me show you that sketch. Here it is right here. Tiny little sketch. Just some rounded sort of domes. Really simple in terms of modeling, but I think if we arrange them nicely, we could come up with something really beautiful. So, whoops. So let's do that. Right. I also think what we need are kind of windows and openings and things like that. And I might just use the capsules themselves to create those. So why don't I do that? I'll just make a copy of that. And you'll see me do this frequently. All I do is hold Command. And then if you use the scale, the position, or the the rotation, scale, rotation, or position tools, these guys. But if you hold Command while you're making those, it will create a copy of them. Kind of like the Option key in Illustrator. So I'm going to throw these in a boole. Let's make those windows. Boole. There we've got a little hole. Now, that's not really how a window works. A window is like an opening in the side of a shape, not necessarily just a depression inside of it. So there's a few ways we could sort of change this up. One is by adding depth to the capsule. We could also change, let's see, I think if you go to A without B, that'll give us an opening. But you see we have no thickness on the walls of these things. So I'm going to take this whole boole. I could extrude this, but sometimes it's nice to just add a cloth surface because it's non-destructive. I'm going to create single object. I'm going to hide new edges, both of those guys, and then I'll go here, just add some depth. And you know what? I don't love the way that's creating, I don't love that hole that this is creating, so I'm going to try putting the cloth surface only on one of the capsules, and I'm not loving that either because it's not really connecting. So let's see. Oh, and that's because we have A without B. Now let's try A subtract B. Yep, much better. That'll close in this gap here. That's more of what we want. So let's kind of make this little bubble village. See, now we've got everything that's still adjustable, totally non-destructive. We can kind of rotate these guys, scale them up and down, all that good stuff. Let's try this. Since we're outdoors, I'm pretty sure I'm going to be using physical sky anyway. Let's get some stuff in there to make this preview window look just a little bit nicer. All right, so we'll test render while we're waiting. Now, I don't want to see the HUD, so turn that off, and then I don't have that ugly green thing in the middle. And I actually not a huge fan of that SSAO. All right. The other thing I want to do is make a little door. Now, a boole will only recognize sort of two objects or two hierarchies within it. If I go ahead and just copy this, it's going to break the whole thing. But if I go ahead and group these capsules, then I can use them both as ways to remove geometry. And what I'm going to do is use that same capsule shape to create a little door opening. Little opening. How's that look? See what I'm getting at here? And maybe we've got a little kind of hallway thing here. What's up, everybody? Let me know where you're tuning in from. Chat is always open, though frequently underutilized. The last episode was great. Had a lot of interaction, good amount of viewership, but that doesn't necessarily guarantee it'll be the same in the following week. So, in any case. Whoops. I don't necessarily want to see that shape inside of the house, but I'm going to leave it for now. Definitely adjust that as we go. Good morning, Mr. Citizen. How are we doing today? Making a little sort of bubble village today for everyone to stay at home in. I'm really a big fan of using the same shape over and over again to create layout. It seems maybe a bit lazy or like a shortcut, but and maybe it is. But I find that it creates a really nice harmony in the just in the form of everything. Yeah, they are kind of like Tatooine. I'm assuming you meant Tatooine instead of tattooing. Let's see. Another thing I want to do is thicken up these walls and make them consistently thick. As I've scaled things up, those have sort of shrunk down. Autocorrect. Cool. So, a cool way to do that, and this is a feature I wish I knew about earlier, is this little search feature. So I'm just going to go cloth, and it's going to only show me in this hierarchy the cloth surfaces. And now I can just make those, 3 or whatever I like. 3. Okay. That we want is 3 good. I might go thicker. Let's call it 4. Man, 4. Oh, dog's barking. I don't know if you can hear that. Here's the other thing I'm going to do. Yep, that's true, man. That is true. So I'm going to copy the plane here. I'm going to add some hair to it because I want this to be sort of in a grassy field. And speaking of abusing the same form over and over again, I'm going to add some hair. Oh, and it's way too much right off the bat, so let's make the length something like 15. A little deeper, maybe. What I'm thinking now is actually, well, I can go ahead and adjust this later. It's going to add hair all over. I'm going to want to remove hair from some of these objects, or from around some of these objects, but I can go in and delete the geometry that it's attached to later, because the hair will stay mapped to this geometry, which is why actually I made a separate copy of this plane. So I'm going to call this hair plane. It's like an airplane, but it's for hair. Gross. All right. So right off the bat, you'll see we get this hair, which is not what we want. What I want to do actually, let's make another capsule. We'll make this dude thinner. Let's isolate him so we see what we're dealing with. Got this guy thinner, and we're not going to need quite so many rotation segments. So let's turn that down to like 12. That should be fine. We could turn down the cap segments to like, yeah, it's called 4. Let's probably find 2, because there's going to be like blades of grass. A little less long, press somewhere in there. Height segments I'm actually going to turn up a little bit so we have a more natural bending, because we're going to do some bending here. And I'm going to make a copy of this. Because I want to have a backup, and you need to make this object editable to do what I'm about to do. I don't think it works. With unexpanded objects. What's up, Mr. Foria? Hello to you in South Africa. What's going on? So anyway, so I go into this hair, go to hairs. Let's see, editor, generate. Okay, type, none. Let's go to type instance. Yeah, and we go under instance, and we can go ahead and drag this grass in there. Boom, and you'll see it adds something, but that's not exactly what we want. Now, the interesting thing is this, in some ways, this geometry is driven by this hair material. So what we really want to do is I'm going to turn off thickness and specular, or sorry, color and specular. I'm going to go into thickness. I'm going to turn this up, and this is what's going to drive the thickness of that geometry. And I want it to stay even. So root and tip would do 3. We'll see that. That's about what we want. It's about what we want. The cool thing is this: like I could use a cloner for this, you know, and set it to the clone across this plane. But what you don't get automatically is this dynamics. Now, am I going to crash my shit? Let's pause it real quick. You see, I hit play and moved ahead a couple of frames, and you saw that the hair is going to start automatically dropping. So this is going to use the dynamics that are built into the hair object, but apply them to whatever geometry you put inside that instance, which is a really cool tip. The other thing that's cool is you can use hair colliders and all that good stuff to interact with this. So if you're animating, this is a really great way to clone things. I've seen people make like forests with little tree shapes, and you can add wind and it'll start blowing naturally, all that good stuff. I'm not going to animate this. What I am going to do is use some of these parameters in this hair material to give it a little bit more variation. Before I'm going to do that, maybe I don't think we need quite 5,000. Let's call it 3,000. Should make it a little easier for the system to handle. And then let's add some variation. So we've got our thickness up. I like that thickness. Now length. Let's add a little bit of variation there. So now some are longer and some are taller. Thickness, I might even add some variation here too. Some of these guys are going to be a little thicker and thinner. Hello to you in Italy, Mr. Pereira. Mrs. Pereira? I don't know. Pereira friend. How's that? Thanks for tuning in. All right, so now we've got a little more variation. I think I want to add, let's see, some wave. Do we want some wave? Actually, no, I don't think I want some wave. Let's do some frizz. And that's too much. But the cool thing is you can always turn it down. You could even just turn it down with the slider. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to say let's do 30%. Let's do 40% variation. Scale it down. Scale it down. And I'm even going to go to maybe 25% frizz. Yeah. 18% frizz. Who knows? Just a little bit. Let's do some clump. What's clump get us? That I really like, actually. So let's see what we got. It's a little test render. That's where it looks like actually hair. We've got our hair object looking like hairs, sort of our defaults there. And now we can see we've got our geometry in there. Looks great. But what we've also have is the hair as well. You see these additional little shapes. So I'm going to get rid of those. I think there's a way to get rid of those in the settings. Cheat code here actually is just to go to, where are you? Transparency, right? And I'm just going to turn it off. Now it's going to pull this guy off. So now it's transparent. And because it's 100% transparent, I don't think it should add any time to the rendering, but we could test that. You can see now we've lost that bit of the generated hair, and now all we have are our instances, which is what we want. And I believe what I can do now, let's take a material, grassy material, and I apply that to the hair. That should alter the color of that geometry. I don't think you want to apply it to the object itself that's being cloned. Yep, there we have it. Yes, I do. Why do I prefer a physical renderer? Actually, I'm just using the standard renderer here. And I wouldn't say that there's any strict reason I prefer it. It's just what I use. Partly it's because of the computer I have. Now notice this original instance is still here, so I'm just going to turn that off so we don't have that guy sticking up there. Yeah, I'm a big fan of just making the most of the tools you have. That might sound kind of insane. I'm also not like highly technical, if that makes sense. I'm not porting things over to various rendering engines or using all the fancy plugins. I keep things fairly simple. I like to focus on the use of color, cool shapes and forms, all that good stuff. But as I mentioned in the last episode, I just ordered a new computer, much more powerful than the Mac laptop I'm currently running all this off of. So we may start seeing some, some fancier stuff, let's say. I might start experimenting with different sort of rendering modules, and I'll definitely start using more reflections and transparencies and things like that. I'll be a little bit less encumbered by, the horsepower that the computer has, which will be fun. So let's see here. Yeah, and for me, the other thing is just aesthetically speaking, the stuff that I'm into isn't necessarily like the fanciest, shiniest. There's a whole aesthetic that a lot of 3D artists use that is very reliant on fancy materials and plugins and all that stuff. And I kind of like to take a more hands-on approach. I like stuff that's a little bit more hand sculpted, stuff that is simpler and more graphic. I come from more of a traditional illustration background too, and I try to utilize some of that in my work here, even though it is 3D. So I don't know if that makes sense. I'm kind of rambling a bit, but that's a little bit of the thought process. What's up, Chris Powell? Thanks for tuning in. Cal Pesh, how's it going? From Cameroon. Hello. Thanks for tuning in. Hope you guys are staying safe in each of your parts of the world, staying healthy, avoiding that COVID nonsense. So you can see we've got kind of an interesting little scene here. Fairly simple. Made all out of cylinders. I'm trying to think, is there anything that isn't a cylinder? Well, these planes aren't cylinders, I suppose. Grass. All right, I'm going to make a little null group for those guys. This is pretty fun. I want to center this up a little bit. I think there's definitely still some opportunity to improve the composition of these dudes. This little bubble house. Another thing I can do is I'm going to scale this airplane in because we've got a lot of room on each side. Whoa. I don't want to waste the computer's resources on creating all that stuff that we're not even going to be seeing. So that's pretty good. What I'm trying to do is make the grass gets gradually shorter and then just sort of disappear as we get in and around these little domiciles. I don't want grass indoors, obviously. Might need to make little doors for these dudes. Make sure the shadows are dense enough. What's up, Vedant? Thanks for tuning in again. I remember you. Mr. Vedant Hedge sent me some cool renderings over on Instagram. Thanks for sharing those. Made a cool apple. That's right. Let's do a little test rendering. I have my little pup buster in the intro of today's video. If you missed that, you can rewind and go check out the puppy. That's a really nice comment, Chris Powell. I'll call you Chris if that's okay. Yeah, logo animations are there's something I could do. Not my specialty. Maybe we could play with that one day. No promises. I'm trying to find the angle that I want on this dude. I do have to. Thanks, SK Robert. Thank you. It is a cute dog. I should just have all my thumbnails just be Buster. And that way everyone will click, and then they'll be like, what the hell is this 3D graphics stuff? What the hell's a 3D graphic? Maybe I can grab just some plain old capsules, add a few additional details without necessarily needing to add windows to them. Speaking of Windows, my new computer will be PC. First time away from Macs. A little bit intimidating. Does anyone? Here's a question for the community. Does anyone know of any resources for people switching from Mac to PC? I'm gonna have to do some learning. I have to teach myself some stuff, which is good. Got a new monitor, new mouse and keyboard, it's wicked fast new computer. I'm excited about all that, but there's going to be it's going to be a little bit of a learning curve. Types of resources. I don't know. Really, I probably just look around on YouTube, just in terms of getting to know the operating system, the similarities and dissimilarities between OS and Windows, and you know, I've been on Macs for 15 years, so it's going to take some getting used to. You know, I bet there's probably little plugins I could use to make the experience more like a Mac, like expose, hot corner types of things. No more command key. I'm going to start using control with my pinky. That's going to be weird. Getting my pinky in on the action. I'm a big fan of key commands, like shortcuts, which will be interesting. Yeah, I have seen some people use. It's not exactly like expose, but there's some commands that'll show all the windows or hide certain windows, and that's just the kind of stuff I'm going to need to get used to. Well, that's good to hear, SK. Not as rocky a transition as I expected. That's cool. My wife actually had to her current job. She had to switch to a PC. She wasn't loving it at first. I think she's getting used to it. Let's start. Thank you. You keep it up too. Y'all keep it up as well. Yeah, the Rusted Pixel is really good. I'm a fan of their work. Irish artist, I believe. I've actually gotten confused for that once or twice in terms of the work looking similar. But that I take as a compliment because I really appreciate their work. And they're another person. I mean, they might do more fancy materials and rendering techniques. I'm not sure what kind of rendering engine they use actually. But the Rusted Pixel is a good example of an artist who has their own style, has sort of their own artistic voice within 3D, and doesn't just rely on fancy plugins as a crutch, right? Like they use fairly sophisticated modeling, and I guess it's a matter of developing taste. What I see a lot is artists who know which buttons to press and know which plugins to download and have the best rendering engines available, but don't necessarily have good taste, and they're not paying attention to composition, and I don't know. There's nothing wrong with that. I'd like to try and maintain a little more artistic credibility. Does that sound ridiculous? Says the guy who's making stupid little bubble villages. So take that for what it's worth. How much time do I spend on my machine? Can you clarify your question? Um, yeah, that's a good point, machine. I think, like, coming from graphic design, um, which is where my education is and where I've spent much of my time professionally, um, the, you're working with parameters and constraints all the time. And I think some of the cleverest designs are informed by the parameters that they have to conform to. Um, so keeping things simple is good. You can make amazing art with crayons. It's cheap paints. So, and yeah, that makes sense, right? I'm going to write a song with just 3 chords, or I'm only going to use this scale, or you know, whatever. And there's like amazing guitarists who all they use is like a fairly affordable acoustic guitar, and then there's guitarists who maybe their chops aren't that great, but they got like all the pedals. They got all these fancy pedals and can do really cool distortion, but like their playing isn't that good. Their taste isn't really that good. So to answer your question, let's start. I would say no, it's not. It's not necessary at all. I've been using just Cinema 4D's native renderer for over 10 years. Maybe my work is suffering a little bit from that. Maybe I'm not the right guy to ask, but no, you definitely don't need to. Um, you don't need to use Redshift or Octane. Some people like to. That's great. Maybe I should try those one day. We'll see. Right. I'm gonna make grass actually a little longer. Add a little bit more of it. Let's say 4,000. So I want a fuller sort of garden here. Actually, let's go all the way up to 5. This is going to hurt me a little bit, but it's what I want. So who cares? We do a test rendering. While that's going, let me get in this hair plane with my sculpt tools a little bit more. Continue doing what I was doing. Do you have any tips on learning good composition? Ollie asks. That's a great question. Um, yeah, I would say go simpler. Just like practice. Get a sketchbook, get some colored pencils, or even just a pen, and just practice with like circles and triangles and squares. Figure out what looks good. There's a lot of modern artists, not modern like today, but I mean like the art movement of modern art, like not contemporary artists, but modern artists from 40 years ago, and like Rothko or some of these guys would do kind of interesting work with very limited shapes and colors and stuff like that. Also, rule of thirds is a big thing. Look up the elements of composition or the elements of design is something they banged into our heads in graphic design school. You got things like unity, harmony, variation. Gosh, I'm a bad student. I can't remember them all. But there are certain principles that you can fall back on that will just allow you to make good decisions in terms of composition. The other thing is, if you see an image that you really, really like and you feel like the composition is strong, save it and make some notes. Like what is it about the composition that's strong? Is it because it's centered and has detail around the edges? Is it because it's utilizing the rule of thirds? Is it because it's a mostly black layout with some hits of red that are high contrast? There's no hard and fast rules, but there are certain parameters that can sort of help guide your decision making. Also, another thing with compositions, if an image isn't working for you, don't be afraid to abandon parts of it. Just, just delete or change or, you know. But it's just the kind of thing that takes time to develop. Like I think the hardest thing is developing one's eye. I mean, that's like the lifelong pursuit and journey of any type of artist. It's just figuring out what looks right. I don't know. Maybe that comes easier to some, but I'm still trying to figure that out. All right. So we're making progress. Let's check out what we've got so far. For sure. Let me know if that's helpful. And if you want, I can, find my email address and send me an image. I'll give you an opinion. Here's a thought for everyone. I've been toying with the idea of making a Patreon for the practice, and offering, critiques or lessons or feedback opportunities for people of a certain like of a certain donor level. Would you guys be interested in that? Maybe that should be the question of the week. Should I start a Patreon? Would you give me $1 or $2? Because I've been doing, I'm close to 200 episodes of the practice. I've been doing this show for like 5 years, and it's not very profitable. Plane delay or other MoGraph. Is it make you understand? Thank you very much for your videos. Yeah, for sure. That makes sense. I know what you mean. Plane effectors, things like that. Like you just want, subtle MoGraph kind of things to take a logo from Illustrator and make it move around and look really sweet. Thanks, Robert, SK. Appreciate that. Maybe I'll do it. All right, I think it's time for some GI. Turn it to low to preview. And what I also want to do, while I'm doing this, SK Robert, what do you think would be an appropriate level? Like a $5 a month donor would get, 3 to 4 review sessions monthly or something like that. I'm curious about how I would wind up structuring it. So, camera yet? Did I put the camera in one of these groups? I don't think so. All right, cool. That's good to hear, Ali. Thank you. All right, so let's do a little depth of field on this bad boy. Adjust these handles. Get this going. Test. I often forget, but you got to go in here and turn on depth of field as well. Distance blur. Cool. Let's try it. So now we've got GI and some depth of field. This should look pretty fancy. Yeah, same. Same SK. So I don't want to break the bank. I don't want to discourage viewership. I probably will continue doing like a free version. It's available to everyone on YouTube. It would be good to monetize it a little bit more, and it might be nice to have a little bit more sort of one-on-one, interaction with some of the people who like watching the show. Pretty nice with the GI, actually. What I think I'm going to do, just to brighten things up a little bit, is, let's see, add a little bit of luminance, just say 15%. Cool. Also going to add a bit of noise to our buildings here. And I usually do that in the diffusion channel. Man, I really like having my sculpt tools here. I can't believe I haven't done that years ago. That's one of the things I love most about Cinema 4D is, and you know, Photoshop and Illustrator really need to get on this. Adobe needs to follow suit. But you can customize these windows and these menus like really to your heart's content. Any function that Cinema can do, you can create a button out of, and you can just customize to your heart's content. So I took some sculpt tools I use all the time, and I just added them right here where I can grab them, so I don't have to go up here and go looking for these things or to change over to this sculpting menu. Another thing I did a while ago was I added these spline modifying commands, which were kind of hidden but are super useful that I wind up using all the time. So holler at your boy. I think yesterday Maxon announced a new release of Cinema, which is kind of cool. I'm still on release 20. They're on 22 now, and they're calling it like S22. I don't know what that means, like season 22? I don't understand it. They were always called R's, like release 1, release 5. What's going on there? Come on. There we go. Look at that grassy field. And that just subtle depth of field looks really nice, if you ask me. Right, let's make some little adjustments here. Depth of field. I want this to be a little more in focus, and this to be a little less in focus. And I think I should probably turn the blur strength up just a touch. Can't go too crazy with that blur strength. That'll get really strong. Thing I think I want to do. Actually, let's see how this renders now that I've added a little bit of luminance to these materials. I was going to go ahead and adjust the gamma, which actually I'm going to do anyway. Thinking out loud here. I'm going to add a noise texture, whoops, to the specular, just to break up the surface of these domes a little bit. Let's go with stubble. All right, let's see what that gets us. That depth of field still just a little bit too subtle. So bringing that in a touch. Let's add a little front blur too. Let's see how that goes. You can see a bit of the variation we're getting from that noise in the diffusion channel. Sorry, the specular channel. I think I want to scale it down a little bit though. Whoops, that's way too far. Going way up on the gamma. Let's do it. I'll also do change the time, change the angle of the sun essentially. A little bit later in the afternoon. And of course, we'll adjust the rotation so that we get some nice shadows. So now it's adding the depth of field as a post effect. That's actually looking pretty good. I like the blur up front. A little blurry here. I want these dudes to be crisp. I gotta make some adjustments. So that's cool. I've never tried this before, but looks like this focus object, looks like there's an area for a focus object that you can drop in and it'll automatically train the focus on there. Now I wonder, I grab, yeah, that's pretty cool. So if I move the camera, it'll stay focused on that point. That can be useful for animating things. So look at that, I'm learning on the fly with all my pals on the internet right now. Right. I can tell it's brighter already based on these pre-passes. All right, nobody's answered the question of the week so far this week, so I'll ask it again. And the question of the week is very meta because it's, do you care at all about the question of the week? I've been doing these for, 20 some odd episodes, 25 episodes or so. Maybe I'm just not very good at picking the questions, but many weeks I don't get any replies at all. So I might just discontinue that. What do you think? Crickets. There's my answer, I think. Yeah, I always ask them at the beginning. So, I mean, people who tune into the live stream may or may not catch them. Which that's a little bit of a, I guess, a flaw. Okay. 2 affirmatives for keeping it. Thank you, guys. Yep. That was, let me see, which was that last week? That was the week before last. Should have kept them all in this document, in this Word doc. I mean, really what I was trying to do is trying to get people to leave lots of comments on my YouTube videos so that it would move higher in the algorithm. So I get paid, get that YouTube ad money. Making a whole $15 a month. Holy shit. It's coming together here. You know, this is super simple, but I'm really enjoying it, to be honest. Oh, you know what I meant to talk about earlier? I'll show you guys now. Grind that McDonald's meal. Yeah, if that. So, over the last 10 days or so, I have been sharing this body of work that I was sitting on for a while. I'll share them again here. You should really go take a look at my Instagram account at DLGNCE to get a better look at each of these guys. But I put together this series of images that really I wanted to display in a gallery at some point this year, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think galleries they're all closed in this city and will be for a while. And I think that the shows they did have on tap are going to get pushed further back into the year, and it's just something that I didn't think was going to happen. So in any case, instead of showcasing them in a physical gallery location, which hey could still happen at some point, I just decided to release them one a day for 10 days. Many of you guys may have caught these already. So I'm sharing them with you now. I was really happy with how these came out. Some are stronger than others, but it was a really fun series to put together. These feature a lot of 2D post work. So I would create these models in Cinema and render them out, and then I'd come in to Photoshop and do a lot of drawing on top of them. So you can see all this line work and these little dots and all that stuff, which I think gave you the kind of really rough, like a looseness and a rough hand drawn effect to all these 3D renderings, which is really fun. And I like drawing, so it's just an enjoyable workflow. Go check them out. Yeah, I could just have the question sort of featured on the screen. It's not a bad idea. Thank you, sir. I got one of them made into a sticker, actually. Find it easier. What's up, DFIIC? I find it, I do all my posts in Photoshop. Well, all of my static posts. So for those were done in Photoshop. Obviously, After Effects is better for video stuff. Although I have put together like short form animations in Photoshop. That is pretty good. Do you think we could go a touch heavier on the blur? Let's do that. All the way up to 10. When you do a series like that, do you think a lot about color palette for everything in advance, or do you let one picture inform the next? Kind of both, right? So the first few I made without thinking about color at all. And then as I was looking at them as a body of work, as a collection, I would, just sort of open them all up on the screen at once or kind of scroll through them in a similar way that I just showed you now. And then I started comparing them and figuring out what the color palette should be as the series moved forward. I wanted to have a little bit of lots of different colors in each of the pieces, but not too much color in any one piece. I'm definitely thinking about complementary colors as well. Like you saw, there was one with reds and greens in it. Those are complementary colors, maybe some blues and oranges. And I knew that I wanted each one of those pieces have sort of a primary color. They have this flat color background and a primary color, not in the color mixing sense, just in, it's the main color of each of those. So each of them has like sort of a main color and then secondary colors. So yes, I do think about color as a series. Because thinking about them hanging in a gallery all together, it made sense to have a distribution of color across the body of work. So I'm going to push out a final right now. I think this episode is going to run a little bit shorter than usual, and I think that's okay. We'll be at about an hour here probably. It's quite simple, but I'm actually digging this. I could add little doors, you could go and add little characters, you could add different types of plants. There's a lot you could do here. I'm not going to do it. Let's fire up Photoshop for a little bit of post while we're at it. Here's a question. Do most of you guys subscribe, or do you just catch this feed sort of in your, when you go onto YouTube? And do you get notifications? Like, do you come here on Tuesday mornings knowing that I might be streaming, or are you on YouTube anyway? Or do you get the little email that says, hey, we're going live? And then go from there. Nice. Appreciate that. Subbed and notified. Mwah! Thank you. You guys are awesome. It's really cool to see sort of the viewership grow slowly but surely. Some YouTube accounts just take off. Mine has been kind of a slow and steady grind. I realized that if you're doing like a cooking show or a fitness channel, there's lots of YouTube content that is has more universal appeal than like one specific 3D graphics application. So I understand that I'm not going to be the next Casey Neistat or Athlean X or one of these folks. But it is, after, almost, I think about 5 years I've been doing this show, creeping up on 200 episodes. It is rewarding to have people showing up routinely and leaving nice comments and stuff like that. So I really appreciate all you. Thank you for tuning in. 12,000 subscribers isn't that many by YouTube standards, but, it's a lot for me. It's been a, slow, steady, incremental growth, but it's cool. We're making progress, and I do appreciate all you guys. Sorry to distract you, Ollie, from more pressing things. Yeah, I know. I got to do more clickbaity stuff. Just dogs, just cute dogs and cooking. And I should do thumbnails with my face going like this and like arrows, all the YouTube clickbait. Thank you to you and yours in Portugal. My mom and my sister spent some time in Lisbon and said it was beautiful and amazing. I've always wanted to go. Thanks, Santiago. Appreciate you. Thanks for tuning in. I have noticed that since I've brought the webcam back into the streams, I've been getting a little bit more viewership. I think maybe folks like seeing my talking head, which is interesting. I think it encourages me to speak up more. Uh, that I think also encourages viewership. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, doctors hate this man. All the clickbait titles. That's funny, machine. 3 simple tricks to make your art career explode. Graphic designers hate this artist. 5 easy ways to earn lots of income from home while doing art. Three easy steps to make $1 million. Get any job with these simple portfolio hacks. Yeah, I just got to be lowbrow. It's got to be lowbrow as hell. That'll get me the jobs. All right. Well, like I said, a little bit of a short episode this week. That's okay. It was just nice to make simple imagery. Um, Everything, all the geometry in this scene is a capsule. I used a couple booles. I used the hair object, but only to clone capsules. So this is a 100% capsule-based image. So take that for what it's worth. Like I said, appreciate each of you very much. Thank you for tuning in. If you found this useful, please share it with a pal. Hit that like and subscribe button. If you have any further questions, don't hesitate to reach out. Drop one in the comments below. You can find my email on my website, which is diligence.studio. Hit me up on Instagram at DLGNCE to keep up with the work that I'm putting out. And until next week, this is Stuart saying goodbye. See you soon. Appreciate you all. Later.